Okay, so today is the beautiful holiday of Pesach Sheini, and we're going to study a beautiful argument between Rashi and Tosfot about this, and a beautiful lesson to begin the day. So if you look at text number 1, this is from the book of Bamidbar. Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe b'Midbar Sinai, b'shana hashenit yitzitam Mitzrayim v'chodesh harishon lemor. You can see the English translation as well if you want to. Vayasu bnei Yisrael et Pesach b'moado. They made the Pesach ב-14 יום בחודש הזה, בין 40 תעשו אותו במועדו. וידבר משה לבני ישראל לעשות הפסח, right? So we're talking about the Korban Pesach that the Jewish people did. This is just what it says in the beginning of Bamidbar. It talks about the Korban Pesach. The problem is, it's not in chronological order. So let me explain. Look at Rashi. Rashi says in the first month, the portion at the beginning of the book of Bamidbar was not said until Iyar. So what happened is, Bamidbar, which we read over here, is counting. The Jews were counted actually in the month of Iyar, which was the second month in the calendar. When did they do the Korban Pesach? That was in the first month. So technically speaking, the events don't follow in a chronological order. First should happen the Korban Pesach, and only afterwards should we talk about the counting. So Rashi explains why is it not in chronological order. He says the portion at the beginning of the book was not. From this you learn that there's no chronological order in the Torah. That's number one. But why does the scripture not begin with this chapter? For is it a disgrace to Israel that throughout the 40 years the children of Israel were in the desert, they brought only this Passover sacrifice alone. So let's just talk about history over here. In the year 2448, this was the year the Jewish people left Egypt. And in this year, the Jewish people offered the Paschal lamb in Egypt, right? The next morning they left Egypt. So the following year, God commanded the Jews in the desert, this was year number 2 of the 40 years, to offer the Korban Pesach. So Rashi explains, when the Torah lists what happened in 2449, the second year that they were in the desert, the Torah doesn't list it in chronological order because it was like a disgrace to Israel that throughout the 40 years, they never offered another sacrifice. In other words, the rest of the 38 years in the desert, they never offered the Korban Pesach. It was almost like a one-time thing only in Egypt, and then afterwards for the first time for the first year. So the problem with this explanation is, let me just pull it up for you. Skip out text number 3. Hold on. Problem with this is, this is the question the Rebbe asks us. Look at the text number 4. So second, Rebbe says like this: Rashi's answer for it is a disgrace to Israel that throughout the 40 years the children of Israel were in the desert, they brought only this Passover sacrifice alone. Doesn't seem to make sense. What is the disgrace here? Rashi already explained above that the Torah makes this commandment contingent upon their entry into the land. But in the desert, they were obligated only to bring one Passover sacrifice, the one they performed in the second year by divine mandate. In other words, they were explicitly obligated to bring the offering only in the land of Israel. The Rebbe asked, Rashi himself brings us another verse which says that God didn't command them for 38 years to bring the Paschal lamb, the Paschal sacrifice in the desert. So what's the disgrace to Israel? They were never commanded it. So Tosfot brings a whole answer here. I'm not going to get into that because this is a 10-minute power lecture, but there's a whole beautiful argument between Rashi and Tosfot here. Just going to cut straight to the answer. Beautiful answer with a beautiful lesson. So again, this is from the Rebbe. Hold on, text number 7. Okay, so text number 7 is introducing the idea of what the holiday is today. And once we understand that, we'll understand the answer. Today is a holiday of Pesach Sheini. What does it mean, Pesach Sheini? So there were, you could read it inside. I'm not going to read the whole thing inside. But basically, the first year that they offered, in the year 2449, when they offered the Korban Pesach, there were certain Jews who were impure, and they couldn't offer it. So they came to Moses and they said, listen, why should we suffer because we were impure, because we missed out the first opportunity? So Moses told them, okay, we're going to give you a second chance because you asked and you kind of demanded, we'd really, really love to offer a sacrifice. God allowed you a second chance. So the idea of Pesach Sheini today, the reason why we eat matzah and we celebrate, we don't say tachnun, is because God is actually giving us a second chance as a result of us asking from God, please give us a second chance. With this in mind, we can answer the question. Okay, so text number 9 is explaining what I just said. And number 10a and 10b. So we go to text number 11. Okay. So text number 11, because a few individuals protested and said, why should we lose out? God established Pesach Sheini on the 14th of Iyar, enabling them to bring the Passover sacrifice. This is something unprecedented when it comes to mitzvot. So now, the reason, what does Rashi mean that the reason why the Torah describes, not in chronological order, right? First it says that the Jews in Bamidbar, God counted the Jews, and only afterwards does it say that the Jews offered the sacrifice, and kind of Rashi hints, or Rashi says, the reason why it doesn't follow it in the right order is because we don't want to, it's kind of embarrassing for the Jews. So text number 12, how is it that for all the remaining 39 years, the Jewish people were in the desert? They didn't demand of God. Why should we lose out? Expressing a wish to bring the offering to God, the Passover sacrifice. What Rashi is alluding to, what Rashi is saying is that yes, of course, God didn't command them for 38 years in the desert to offer the sacrifice, but the Jews should have demanded it. The Jews should have said, we want to offer the Paschal Lamb. We remember doing it last year. God, please give us this mitzvah. And that's what Rashi alludes to when Rashi says that it's kind of lignutan shel Yisrael. And there's a tremendous lesson from here, which we see over here. Over here in text 13, Sefer HaChinuch, he just explains that really there's very few mitzvot that we could do in our day and time. So what we should do is demand of God, God, please, we want to fulfill all the mitzvot. That is the lesson that we learned from this shiur. I'll look at inside over here. Text number 15. So look at this. The above teaches us the importance of crying out. The message from today's power class is we should cry out. Why should we lose out? The prayers of the Jewish people as a whole, and certainly the heartfelt pleas of every individual asking God to bring the final and complete redemption, as we recite 3 times a day in Amidah, bring the redemption to reality speedily in our days. When Mashiach comes, we will be able to fulfill all the mitzvot. There's the original 613 mitzvot. Today's day and age, we can fulfill hardly any. The exact count here is in the Sefer HaChinuch. The exact count of mitzvot today, you see, altogether, there are 369 mitzvot that are applicable in the current era. Many of these are only obligatory under certain circumstances. Sometimes a person will never in his life be obligated to fulfill them. For example, there are people who never hire others, to do with employees, so they never become obligated to pay their workers on time. Similarly, some of the Torah's prohibition only come into effect as a result of a person's deeds. By avoiding those deeds, one is not bound by the prohibition. For example, the prohibition against delaying the fulfillment of vows only falls upon one who has taken a vow. One who never takes a vow can never violate the prohibition. The same is true for many of the mitzvot. So all told, there are 99 such mitzvot, 78 positive and 21 negative. The number of mitzvot that apply to every Jew, regardless of circumstance, is 270. So we only have 270 out of 613. So the lesson from today is we have to demand of God, God, please take us out of this exile so that we could fulfill all the mitzvot and we shouldn't be left out. And the same idea with the coronavirus. When we find ourselves in this situation where we're pleading and begging with God, Almighty God, please, we don't want to be involved with this coronavirus anymore. We want you to take us out of this exile. And just like the original Lag BaOmer ended the plague where 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva suddenly stopped dying, right? They suddenly started to die, and Lag BaOmer, they suddenly stopped dying. So it is our prayer, fervent prayer and wish that God will end this coronavirus even before Lag BaOmer, and this pandemic will end.